The life of Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu had been nothing short of extraordinary. Within the span of 25 years, he had exhibited such qualities which truly showed that he was divinely inspired in every aspect of his life. However, after the age of 25, his life would completely change, for he now had a tremendous responsibility upon his shoulders. In essence, he had begun a new era, as he was now the second Khalifa of Islam, Ahmadiyyat. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to Ahmadiyyat, Roots to Branches.
I came merely to sow the seed. That seed has been sown by my hands. It will now grow and blossom forth, and none dare impede its growth. Ahmadiyyat, the true Islam, is the flourishing tree. But this is not just any tree. This is the tree, the seed of which was sown under the guidance of Allah Himself through the hands of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmed of Qadian alayhi salatu wasalam, the promised Messiah and Imam Mahdi. Its miraculous growth in the midst of difficult and seemingly impossible circumstances is indeed a tale that is bound to increase one's faith, as if this is the tree that grew from concrete. Presently, under the guidance and leadership of our beloved Khalifa, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmed, may Allah strengthen his hands, the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat is now present and propagating the peaceful message of Islam in over 200 countries around the world. The Jamaat has built over 15,000 mosques, over 30 hospitals, and over 500 schools. It has translated the Holy Quran into over 70 languages. This is but merely a glimpse at the progress and a fraction of the achievements of Ahmadiyyat in only one single century. But this is Ahmadiyyat at present. Let us now take a step back and witness exactly how Ahmadiyyat, by the sheer grace of Allah, reached this point and attained these heights. For history is not only a means to understand and appreciate the present, but also a means to envision the future. Follow us on this journey.
On today's episode of Roots to Branches, we will be exploring some of the initial steps taken after the establishment of the Second Khilafat in educating the community as well as propagating the message of Islam and Ahmadiyyat. We will take a look at the first Sadr Anjuman meeting held as well as the first Majlis Shura held after the establishment of the Second Khilafat. We will then see how the propagation of Islam and Ahmadiyyat began establishing itself at an international level when various centers for tabligh or propagation were established. We will then take a look at the second nikah of Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, as well as the completion of the Khalifatul-Masih. Now, another aspect which we'll be exploring in today's episode is the daily schedule of Hazrat Khalifatul-Masih II Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu after the establishment of his Khilafat in its very early stages. But first, let us begin by taking a look at one of the most important steps which Hazrat Khalifatul-Masih II Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu took in educating the community, which was the establishment of Durusul Quran.
Although we see that the Jamaat in Qadian was going through a great deal of persecution from the Lahori Jamaat, it is worthy of mentioning that Hazrat Muslim Maud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu took a revolutionary step for the future generations. On the 17th of March 1914, Hazrat Muslim Maud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu started a series of Durusul Quran in Masjid al-Aqsa, and he started with a commentary of Surah al-Mujadilah. Now, what's interesting to note is that Hazrat Muslim Maud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu took different parts of the Holy Quran throughout the years, and he would emphasize on these different parts according to the need of the time. So for example, in June of 1930, Hazrat Muslim Maud took the commentary of Surah Al-Fatiha and explained it according to the need of the time. Or there was a time when Hazrat Muslim Maud took some parts of the Holy Quran and used them as guidance for those Ahmadis who were living outside of India. Now these durus started to be recorded in Al-Fazl starting from the 8th of April 1914 and were later compiled in a book as we know today as Haqaiqul Furqan. Now, Hazrat Muslim Maud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, despite his very busy schedule, would start his durus at Zohar namaz, and they would sometimes go for 4 hours, ending at Maghrib namaz. And Hazrat Muslim Maud would regularly take attendance at times to see how many and which of his companions were coming into the mosque. And at other times, he would also test his companions or test the people of the Jamaat to see how much of the information they were retaining. So we see that even during this time of great persecution, this Jamaat of Allah was taking steps for the reformation and education of the future progenies that were to come, and to make sure that they were staying upon their spiritual binding.
Less than a month after this young man, Sahibzada Mirza Bashir Mahmood Ahmad radiallahu anhu, was elected as the successor to the promised Messiah ﷺ, fulfilling the shoes of his own teacher, Hazrat Khalifatul-Masih II radiallahu anhu, he found himself on April 10th, 1914, presiding the Sadr Anjuman meeting, the first in his tenure of Khilafat. And what's quite interesting is that at this time, Maulvi Muhammad Ali Sahib was not any longer a part of this entire body. This was for various reasons, but we can understand the implications that any board of director or any executive, when he is removed from a team, the entire chemistry of the team changes. Mind you, he was one of the more prominent and outspoken members. So a lot of huge changes were about to be had. Less than 2 days later, in fact, on the 12th of April, 1914, one of the most momentous undertakings began, and that was with Majlis-e-Shura. Now we know, Basil Sahib, that on the 12th of April, this was the fulfillment of one of the most prestigious institutions in Islam, most important after Khilafat itself. And Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu has said himself most eloquently that La khilafata illa am mashwara, that there is no Khilafat save by the assistance of consultation. And this shura was extremely important, because here this 25-year-old man is being advised by these sage-like companions of the promised Messiah ﷺ, who are now well into their 70s, some into their 80s, and some even older than that. And what's so remarkable about this is that the things that are being discussed in the shura, although the means of the Jamaat are so humble, yet the profundity of the ideas and the visionary construct of what they're talking about. For example, the first point that was raised is that all of India, every village and every city in India, needs to be filled with missionaries. Then another point that they raised was an administrative point, and a very important one. We have to bear in mind that the 18th clause of the Sadr Anjuman read that whatever the promised Messiah ﷺ says in these meetings is absolutely binding upon the Jamaat and must be acted upon incontrovertibly. However, now this was to be replaced naturally with the title of Hazrat Khalifatul-Masih II radiallahu anhu. Whatever he said, whatever verdict he came to, as the Holy Quran says, فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ, then after you have consulted them, then put your trust in Allah, it is now binding upon the Jamaat. And the third point, that is almost a scary thought at that time, yet they delved right into it, is that they said that not only are the number of missionaries insufficient, but we need to actually create new universities and produce a new level of scholarship that should be used for the international level of the propagation of Islam. Now, this was, of course, the incredible, profound thinking, the think tank. But Basil Sahib, what can you tell us, and I'm sure you can speak very well to the practical application of these brilliant ideas and proposals in this first blessed Majlis-e-Shura?
Yes, Sabahat Sahib, very much so. In fact, if we go back in history, we will find out that Hazrat al-Muslim Maud Razillah Ta'ala Anhu spared no time in putting all of these proposals to practice and taking practical measures. In fact, on the very same day that this entire discussion was held, Hazrat Anwar approved the establishment of the Anjuman Taraqi-e-Islam. That is the Anjuman for the progress of Islam. And many of us sometimes don't remember this name, but in fact, this was a crucial and integral precursor to the now famous Tehreek-e-Jadid, which later took over in 1945. But for the first 3 decades, the Anjuman Taraqi-e-Islam, headed by Hazrat Qamarul Anbiya, Mirza Bashir Ahmad Sahib Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, and inclusive of some of the more prominent scholars and missionaries that the Jamaat's history has seen, including Maulana Sher Ali Sahib, Mir Muhammad Ishaq Sahib Raziyallahu Anhuma. This institution, this Anjuman, played a very, very important role, specifically within the subcontinent in fulfilling the needs of the propagation of Islam. Now, earlier on, we were discussing, Sabahat Sahib, the idea of Hazrat Khalifatul-Masih II Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu desiring to globalize this propagation of Islam. And in fact, on the very same day that this Anjuman was established, Hazrat Anwar delivered a heart-moving speech about this very topic at the conclusion of this first shura. And Hazur delved into the personal narrative and his perspective on Tabligh. He said that since my childhood, and on the record we have since the age of 12, the kind of prayers he would do in this regards, he says, since my childhood, it has been my ardent desire that every single service that is done for Islam, my prayer has been that it be done at my hand from God. And then pointing to the companion sitting in front of him in this Majlis Ashura, Hazrat Anwar said that you companions, you missionaries, you dedicated people of the Jamaat are in fact an answer to those prayers that I did in my childhood. Moving this narrative forward, he said that my desire is that every single nation in the world and every single language of the world sees the message of Islam being propagated in it. And at the conclusion of it, he advises the Jamaat, in fact, encourages it, that we should not shy away from making our goals greater than life. For this is not our work. Relating to the prophecy of the promised Messiah, ﷺ, the revelation from God, where God promised him, saying that we will inspire men from heaven to come to your help. Hazur says that this entire system belongs to the works of God, and it is his responsibility to help it. And it was on this beautiful teaching that Hazrat Anwar concluded the first ever shura held under his Khilafat.
When we look at the work which a Khalifa has to do within the span of a day, we find ourselves astonished that they're able to fit so many tasks within the span of 24 hours. Hence, it comes as no surprise that the schedule of Hazrat Khalifatul-Masih II Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu was extremely busy as well. His schedule would begin in the very early morning. He would lead the morning prayers at the earliest possible time in Masjid Aqsa, after which he would give a dars of the Holy Quran. After that, until about 12 p.m., Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu would read letters and respond to them, and he would tend to various tasks and matters which are associated with the office of Khilafat. Then after the Asr prayer, Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, the second Khalifa, would sit in the mosque and he would give a dars on various topics, on wide-ranging topics, and he would give some topics of general knowledge for people to think about. Then in the evening, he would hold a question-answer session. Now, similarly, in this question-answer session, people were free to ask a question on any topic, and Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, with his wide-ranging knowledge, would give very profound and clear-cut answers. And he would give food for thought for the people to go home with, and so that they could come back the next day and ask even more questions. Then after the Isha prayers, Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu would stay up for many hours, continuing with his work which was associated with the office of Khilafat. And it can't be said that he would sleep at night as we perceive it to be. Rather, he would rest for a few hours, after which he would wake up in the very early morning and offer tahajjud prayer. Now, he himself describes that I would wake up in the morning and weep before God, and I would pray constantly for the community, for its success, and for each and every member of this community. Now, when we look at the system of mulaqats, or meeting the members of the community, you know, the perception which we have today, you know, we are very lucky that we get to have one-on-one mulaqats with the Khalifa of the time. However, at that time, such a system was not in place. So if one wanted to meet Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, the second Khalifa, it would be after either a prayer or after a dars which he had delivered in the mosque. So they would have to meet him in this way. Then slowly people began meeting him in his office, a very small office in which he used to work. So a few people would go and meet him there. Then in about 1927, Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu had a Qasr Khilafat built beside his home, which is where people would come from all over the world to meet him, and this is where he would hold his mulaqats. Now, similarly, the system of letters. Now, today, we know we are able to write letters to the Khalifa, and we get very quick responses as well. However, at that time, there was no office of private secretary. Rather, there was a postmaster. And the first postmaster for Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu was a man by the name of Maulvi Muhammad Ismail Halalpuri Sahib Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu. And after him, there were many other people who had the opportunity of serving in this capacity. And basically, they would help Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu in dealing with the hundreds and thousands of letters which he would receive. They would either present it to him or read it out to him. And then according to his instruction, they would write a reply, or Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu would write a reply himself. And what's interesting to see here is that there are not many means available to Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu in this regard. Rather, he was still able to stay in touch with the entire world because, by the grace of Allah, the community, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community had spread throughout the world at this point. And he was able to keep in touch with members of the community all across the world and missionaries posted all across the world. So in this way, with limited means, Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu was able to communicate with the community.
When we think about London within the parameters of the Jamaat, we think of the international epicenter and headquarters of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Yet, we know that it wasn't always like this. In fact, it's so crucial to go back into the pages of history and study what went into creating this Jamaat of London. Because yes, at the very beginning, Qadian was the headquarters, then it was moved partially to Rabwa. But God, in His divine plan, knew from the very onset that London was to take the huge burden of becoming the international headquarters and for the dissemination of the global village in the 21st century, it was to be that standing tower. And so, Basil Sahib, what can you tell us about Hazrat Muslim Maud Radiyallahu Anhu's time and those extremely important fundamental brickstone contributions that he made to this incredible Jamaat of London?
Yes, Sabahat Sahib, the very idea of establishing a mission in London was filled with wisdom. In fact, if we go back to the history of when Chaudhry Fateh Muhammad Sahib Sayyad Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, with the approval of Huzur Anwar, shifted the missionary work centered at Woking to the actual city of London. And over there at a relatively nominal price, bought a piece of land in Putney Southfield. In 1914, just a few years later, the foundation stone was laid there for a center which was to become a veritably international headquarters for a community which was to be equally international. And right from the onset, we begin noticing that it was not just for local missionary work, which was happening very, very avidly at the time in the entire city of London and beyond, but in fact, when we see examples of Abdul Rahim Sahib Nayyar, Raziyallahu Anhu, he would come to London and then from there moved on to Africa after staying there for a few years. We have the example of Mubarak Ali Sahib, who came to London for a year or two, moved on to his missionary work in Berlin. So this was just from the side of the Jamaat. There was something else that was happening with this very center. At the inauguration of the Masjid Fazl, the masjid, this mosque, this mission was something exotic, something foreign to the people of London. And so, Sabahat Sahib, the media attention given to the very inauguration of this masjid was beyond the scope of what people may have imagined. And this masjid, this mission, became the center of attention for any prominent Muslim that would visit at that time the international, and very much so now too, the international city of London, to the point that some of the most important events that led to what is now the subcontinent of India, the political events, the initial trigger of that, in fact, had occurred at this very masjid when Muhammad Ali Jinnah Sahib, Quaid-e-Azam, came to London and in fact received inspiration from that very center of seeing the Muslims coming together in unity, that he decided to proceed on and move on to fight for a free Pakistan. So very much so, this center right from its onset was serving as something way more than just a local mosque.
So it's so curious because what you just said was that London was, historically speaking, the area or the place where the individual that was to found Pakistan was inspired to go and fight for the independence of Pakistan. And likewise, coming back to what was going on in the time of Hazrat Musleh Maud radiallahu anhu, he was not just establishing the Darut Tabligh, the grand mission in London, for the missionaries. That was on one side. But Hazrat Musleh Maud radiallahu anhu, his vision was so profound and transcendental that he was, or had established rather, classes for the laymen, for the common Ahmadi. And these were known as Tablighi classes. And what he did was he would teach the translation of the Holy Quran and the basics of fiqh, of jurisprudence and various other subjects. And he would arrange for teachers, excellent teachers at that, to prepare individuals so that every member of the community became a missionary in his own right.
May 31st, 1914 is another historic day in this community, as on this day, the second nikah of Hazrat Khalifatul-Masih II Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu took place. And it took place with Ahmad-ul-Hay Sahiba, may Allah be pleased with her, who happened to be the daughter of the first Khalifa Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu. Now, Hazrat Musleh Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu had sought permission from the first Khalifa during his lifetime to have his second nikah. And after this, he had seen a vision which led him towards the fact that he would be marrying Ahmad-ul-Hay Sahiba, may Allah be pleased with her. However, he didn't think anything of this dream to begin with. However, after a few members of the community approached him saying that they too had seen similar visions, he was convinced about this fact. So, with this in mind that he would be marrying Ahmad-ul-Hay Sahiba, may Allah be pleased with her, he planned to approach and seek permission from the first Khalifa Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu. But before he could do so, the first Khalifa Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu passed away. So after waiting for some time, Hazrat Musleh Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu approached the guardians of Ahmad-ul-Hay Sahiba, may Allah be pleased with her, and the marriage was set at a dowry of 1,000 rupees. And hence, on May 31st, 1914, this nikah took place. Now the nikah was led by Maulana Muhammad Sarwar Shah Sahib Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, and the guardian of the bride was Mia Abdul-Hay Sahib, may Allah be pleased with him. Now, during the nikah ceremony, when the guardian of the bride was asked as to whether he agreed to this marriage, he stood up and gave a short speech to all those who were present in the mosque. He said, the first Khalifa Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu sacrificed everything for you, for the community. And he was addressing the people present there. He said, whatever was his was yours. He sacrificed his life, his time, and everything he had for you. And whatever was his was yours. His wealth was your wealth, and his properties were your properties. Hence, I cannot agree to this marriage and give, this trust of Hazrat Khalifatul-Masih of Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu away to another person until I have the approval of all those present here today. And upon this, there was a resounding sound of approval from all those present. And upon hearing this, Mia Abdul-Hay Sahib, may Allah be pleased with him, said that now I agree to this marriage. And it was in this way that the second nikah of Hazrat Musleh Maud, Khalifatul-Masih II Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu took place.
Although it was the ardent desire of the promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam to complete the minara during his lifetime, it could not happen as so. So during the lifetime of Hazrat Musleh Maud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, we see a landmark. And that is that on the 27th of November 1914, Hazrat Musleh Maud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu gave a very emotional khutbah Jummah in which he addressed the members of his community and said that it may be so that with the completion of this minara, all the afflictions and trials of the Jamaat may come to a standstill. So although the Jamaat had been going through great difficulty and many of the members were going through a financial crisis, the Jamaat members came forward with great zeal and passion and contributed greatly towards the project. And we see that by the beginning of 1916, the Minara had taken shape and had almost been completed. Now, from 1916 to 1935, we see a number of additions that were made to the Minara in order to add to its beauty. For example, there was a time when the West End Clock Company was contracted in order to add a clock to the Minara. And also in 1929, according to the wishes of the promised Messiah ﷺ, all those who had given more than 100 rupees for the Minara had their name inscribed on the tower. And so with the completion of this tower, the Minaratul-Masih, we see a new era of the promised Messiah ﷺ's community began, in which the glad tidings that he was given from God, that I shall cause thy message to reach the corners of the earth, came to a new point, and the Jamaat began to spread rapidly. And we see even today that this Jamaat continues to grow and leaves all those who witness it bewildered.
And that brings us to the end of this episode of Ahmadiyyat, Roots to Branches. In today's episode, we saw that even though the life of Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu was extraordinary before his Khilafat, after he was appointed as the second Khalifa of Islam Ahmadiyyat, we see that he was granted such capabilities as to take on the task of leading the community of the promised Messiah ﷺ. And his primary focuses were evident from the very beginning, which was to educate the community and to propagate the message of Islam and Ahmadiyyat, and to do so not just within India, but to spread the message of Ahmadiyyat throughout the entire world, whether it was through the various durus which he gave or the establishment of various centers for tabligh. We then saw that Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, the second Khalifa, fit all of these tasks into his daily schedule in such a way where he would complete all of his work and still take time to be with the members of his community. And as the community progressed, so too did the life of Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu itself. We see that Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu had a second nikah, and the Minaratul-Masih was also completed. So with that, Jazakumullah for watching. Until next time, when by the grace of God, Ahmadiyyat will have branched out even further. Assalamu alaikum.
हर चार सू है शोहरा हुआ कादियान का, हर चार सू है शोहरा हुआ कादियान का, मस्कन है जो के महदिए आखिर ज़मान का, मस्कन है जो के महदिए आखिर ज़मान का।